Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Sarah and I'll be guiding you through today's story. What you are about to hear is human science fiction crafted with imagination and voiced by real human narrator. So settle in, take a breath and let's step into the future together. So there I was, mop in hand, standing in front of Sector 7B on Galactic Station 12 when Security Chief Gorma decided today was the day he'd actually do his job. Human Jake Thompson, you are forbidden from entering this zone. Gormath had 6 arms and he crossed all of them, which honestly just looked like he was hugging himself. Real intimidating, buddy. I pointed at the blinking maintenance alert on my datapad. Look, the air filtration system is going haywire in there. It's literally my job to fix it. Negative. This sector has been sealed for 6 standard months following a catastrophic biological contamination event. He said it like he was reading from a manual. Probably was. The juvenile care facility contained within is under permanent quarantine. The daycare, you mean? The cub den. Yes. I sighed. See, here's the thing about working maintenance on an alien space station. Everyone treats every problem like it's going to explode into a space plague. Last week, Gormath quarantined a bathroom because someone's lunch didn't agree with them. Gormath, the system's been beeping for 3 days. Either I go in and fix it, or that whole section loses life support by Tuesday. All 6 of his eyes went wide. You cannot. The disease, it killed, it destroyed, it it gave some kids a rash, according to the actual medical reports I read. I leaned on my mop, which you'd know if you read past the word contamination in the incident file. I cannot allow. Cool. So when the commander asks why Sector 7B turned into a vacuum, I'll just send her your way. Gormat's scales turned a pale blue, which I'd learned meant he was sweating. Metaphorically, I think you do not understand the protocols, human. The regulations are clear. The risk assessment indicates. I was already walking toward the service entrance. Gormath was still reading regulations at me when I ducked into the maintenance corridor. The thing about security protocols designed by committee across 17 different species is that they always forget about the ductwork. Humans invented air conditioning. We know where all the good shortcuts are. I popped the panel with my universal key, which is just a fancy name for a screwdriver and a complete disregard for warning labels, and crawled in. The Cubden was exactly as creepy as you'd expect an abandoned daycare to be. Toys scattered everywhere, those weird alphabet posters with letters from languages that make your eyes water, and that specific smell of juice boxes and regret. Except, alien versions of all that. The lights were on emergency power, flickering like a horror movie. Real, subtle, station designers. Thanks for that. I was halfway to the filtration panel when I heard it. Whimpering. Multiple sources. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I followed the sound to what looked like a blanket fort in the corner, except the blankets were some kind of thermal material that probably cost more than my yearly salary. And huddled inside were 6 pairs of eyes. Well, technically 11 eyes total, because one kid had 3. But who's counting? 6 alien cubs. 6. Just sitting there, terrified, alive, and very much not dead from any plague. Hey, you guys okay? I tried to sound friendly and not like someone who was currently having a mental breakdown about galactic bureaucracy. The smallest one, this little fuzzy thing that looked like a koala had a baby with a raccoon, started crying. Great. Perfect. I pulled up the incident report on my datapad again and scrolled through the medical jargon. There it was, buried in paragraph 17. Diagnosis: spotted fever, comparable to human varicella. Quarantine duration: 14 days. Status: All subjects recovered. Someone had sealed these kids in here 6 months ago over the alien equivalent of chicken pox and then just, what? Forgot about them? The cubs were staring at me now, waiting. All right, I said, standing up. New plan. We're leaving. Naturally, the second I got the cubs to stop hiding, every alarm in the sector started screaming. Turns out, abandoned quarantine zones have motion sensors. Who knew? Well, probably Gormat knew, which is why he'd been having a panic attack earlier. Through the blinking emergency lights, I could see security drones deploying outside the viewport. My datapad buzzed with an incoming transmission, and Commander Vilissa's face filled the screen. She had this thing where she looked perpetually disappointed, like the universe kept personally letting her down. Attention, Sector 7B. We have detected unauthorized movement in the contaminated zone. Remain stationary. Do not approach the exits. Full quarantine lockdown is now in effect. I tried to respond, but the intercom panel on the wall just sparked when I pressed it. Because of course it did. This whole station was held together with spare parts and prayer. Fantastic. I looked down at the six cubs who were now clutching various parts of my jumpsuit like I was their new mom. Any of you kids know how to override a military lockdown? The one with three eyes blinked at me. All three eyes, not at the same time. Here's how I ended up as a janitor on Galactic Station 12, by the way. Poker game on Europa, owed money to the wrong smuggler, got offered a choice between paying my debt or taking a 5-year contract cleaning up after aliens. I picked the mop, seemed safer at the time, really thought I'd made the smart choice. That was before I met the Cubs. There was Pip, the fuzzy crying one, Klaxon, who I named that because he wouldn't stop making this honking noise. The three-eyed kid I called Blinky because creativity was dead and I killed it. Then there was Stretch, who had approximately zero bones and could apparently flatten himself like a pancake. Ember, who glowed orange when scared, which was constantly, so she was basically a nightlight. And finally, Chomper, who had about 70 teeth and kept trying to eat my boots. Okay, team, I addressed them like they could understand standard. Maybe they could, who knows anymore? We're going on an adventure. And by adventure, I mean we're going to not die in here when life support fails. Chomper bit my ankle. I chose to interpret that as enthusiasm. So here's what they don't tell you about alien space stations. The ventilation systems are designed by the lowest bidder, which means they're basically just metal tunnels held together with hope, and whoever's definition of safety regulations got lost in translation. I pried open the maintenance vent with my trusty screwdriver. All right, listen up. We're going through the vents. Stay close, stay quiet, and for the love of all that's holy, Klaxon, do not honk. Klaxon immediately honked. Perfect, great, love that for us. I boosted myself into the vent, and the cubs scrambled up after me. Well, most of them scrambled. Stretch just kind of oozed up like sentient pudding, which was deeply unsettling, but actually pretty useful. The ventilation shaft was cramped, dark, and smelled like recycled air that had been recycled about 14 too many times. Ember's glow actually came in handy here, turning her into a living flashlight. See? Every problem has a solution if you're desperate enough. Stay behind me, I whispered, army crawling through the shaft. 6 sets of footsteps, paws, tentacles, whatever, pattered behind me. It sounded like a weird percussion section. My datapad showed the station layout, and I plotted a route that would take us through the maintenance levels, past the cargo bay, and out through a service exit near the docking ring. Simple, easy. Absolutely nothing could go wrong. That's when I heard the whirring. Security drones, of course, because Velisa wasn't taking any chances with her precious quarantine protocols. Stop, I hissed. The cubs froze. Well, mostly froze. Chomper was still gnawing on what I desperately hoped was his own tail. Through the vent slats, I could see three drones hovering in the corridor below, scanning for heat signatures. Their little red eyes swept back and forth like the world's worst nightlights. Here's the thing about security drones, they are programmed to detect standard biological signatures. Humans? Check. Clarvaxians? Check. Zentari? Check. But they're calibrated for adults, not kids. And they definitely don't account for weird human janitor tricks. I pulled out my thermos. Yeah, I brought coffee into a quarantine zone. Sue me. Or actually, don't, because station legal would probably side with you. I unscrewed the top and poured the cold coffee onto the vent grating. It dripped down into the corridor below, right onto the primary drone sensor array. The drone spun in a confused circle, its sensors trying to identify the liquid. Was it a biological threat? A chemical weapon? No, Gerald, it's coffee. Get your life together. While it was distracted, I quietly unscrewed the vent cover and dropped down into the corridor, landing in that action hero crouch that absolutely destroyed my knees. I'm 34. I'm too old for this. Come on, I whispered up at the cubs. Pip looked terrified. Blinky looked confused with all three eyes. But Stretch, beautiful gelatinous Stretch, just flattened himself and oozed through the grating like he was made of liquid. He plopped onto the floor with a wet sound that I'll be hearing in my nightmares. The other cubs, seeing Stretch make it, gained some confidence. Ember dropped down, glowing brighter with fear. Klaxon honked his way down. Chomper just yeeted himself through the gap, and I had to catch him before he face planted. Pip was still up there, shaking. It's okay, buddy, I said, reaching up. I got you. He squeaked, closed his eyes, and dropped. I caught him, this tiny fuzzy ball of terror, and he immediately buried his face in my jumpsuit. Great. Now I was definitely attached. Blinky was the last one, and he took his sweet time analyzing the drop with all three eyes from different angles. Finally, he deemed it acceptable and gracefully descended. The drones were starting to recover from their coffee confusion. We needed to move. I led the cubs down the corridor, sticking to the shadows. Every time a drone passed, we'd freeze. Ember would dim her glow. Klaxon would somehow, miraculously, not honk. And Stretch would flatten himself against the wall like alien wallpaper. We made it to Junction 7, where the maintenance tunnel connected to the cargo bay. Almost there. That's when Chomper saw his reflection in a polished wall panel and decided it was a threat. He charged at it, all 70 teeth bared, and slammed into the panel with a bang that echoed through the entire section. Every alarm in the junction started blaring. You have got to be kidding me. Overhead, Velissa's voice boomed through the intercom. Containment breach detected in Junction 7. All security personnel converge immediately. The cubs looked at me with their various numbers of eyes, waiting for me to fix this. I looked at the cargo bay door, then at the ventilation shaft above us, then at my data pad showing a dozen security signatures heading our way. New plan, I said, scooping up Pip and Chomper. We run. I'd like to say we made a graceful escape, but the truth is, I burst through that cargo bay door like a deranged mall Santa being chased by security, except my elves were alien children and my sleigh was pure panic. We tumbled out of the maintenance corridor and directly into the main concourse of Galactic Station 12. You know, the big fancy area where diplomats and tourists walk around pretending the station isn't held together with duct tape and lies. And there, waiting for us in full tactical formation, was what looked like the entire security force of the station. Gormat stood at the front, all six arms now holding different weapons. Behind him, Commander Velisa had assembled at least 20 personnel in hazmat suits so thick they looked like they were preparing to fight a biological war. The suits were bright yellow because apparently, even in space, safety gear has to be aggressively visible. Human Jake Thompson, Velisa announced through her suit speaker, which made her voice sound like a robot having an existential crisis. Step away from the contaminated subjects immediately. I looked down at the cubs clinging to my legs and jumpsuit. Pip was still buried in my chest. Ember was glowing bright red now, which I'd learned meant she'd upgraded from scared to absolutely terrified. Klaxon, in a miracle of miracles, was silent. Yeah, about that, I said. Define contaminated. Do not play games, Thompson. You have exposed yourself to a class 4 biological hazard. You are now all under medical quarantine until Dr. Pinnix, I shouted over her, get out here. There was a shuffling from behind the hazmat wall, and Dr. Pinnix emerged. Well, waddled. He was a Bloruvian, which meant he was about 3 feet tall and looked like someone had given anxiety a physical form. He was the station's chief medical officer and also the only person in the entire facility who actually read medical reports instead of just the scary words in them. Yes, hello, I'm here. Please do not shout. My auditory sensors are quite sensitive, Pinnock squeaked. Tell them, I said. Tell them what the cubs actually had. Pinnock looked at Velisa, then at Gormat, then at me, then at his datapad like it might save him from this social interaction. Well, technically speaking, according to the medical records filed 6 standard months ago, the juvenile subjects contracted a mild case of spotted fever, which is comparable to human varicella, commonly known as chickenpox, and the quarantine period recommended was 14 days, after which all subjects were cleared for in standard doc. They had space chickenpox. They got better. 6 months ago, you could hear a pin drop in that concourse. Actually, you could probably hear a pin think about dropping. Melissa's helmet tilted. Explain. Phoenix pulled up his datapad with trembling hands. The quarantine was initiated due to a mistranslation in the medical filing system. The Zentari word for mild fever was translated into standard as catastrophic contamination event. It appears that after the initial 14-day period, the cubs were, well, they were forgotten. The facility was sealed and marked as permanently hazardous. No one checked. Gormat's scales went from blue to a shade of purple I'd never seen before. That is not, I did not, the protocols clearly stated. The protocol stated what the computer told you, I interrupted, and the computer was working off bad data. Meanwhile, these kids have been living in there for 6 months, eating whatever emergency rations were left, and probably wondering why nobody came back for them. I felt Pip's grip tighten on my jumpsuit. Blinky's 3 eyes were all locked on Velisa. Stretch had wrapped himself around my leg like an anxious scarf. Dr. Pinnix approached slowly, scanner in hand. May I? I nodded. He ran the scanner over each cub, his datapad beeping softly with each reading. Malnourished, he muttered. Dehydrated. Mild vitamin deficiencies. But no signs of active infection. No biological hazards detected. They are, medically speaking, completely healthy. Well, as healthy as one can be after living in an abandoned daycare for half a year. The hazmat team started looking at each other. Someone in the back lowered their weapon. Gormat looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Velisa removed her helmet, and her expression was complicated. Relief mixed with horror, mixed with what looked like the beginning of a very long investigation into station procedures. I see, she said quietly. Then Louder. Medical team, stand down. Security, begin standard health screening protocols. Dr. Pinnock, take the juveniles to medical bay for full evaluation and treatment. Pinnock nodded and reached for Pip. The little guy squeaked and burrowed deeper into my jumpsuit. It is okay, small one, Pinnock said gently. I will not hurt you. We will get you food and water and contact your families. Families. Right. These kids had parents. Parents who probably thought they were dead. I tried to hand Pip over, but he wouldn't let go. None of them would. Ember wrapped her arms tighter around my leg. Chomper bit my boot, but affectionately. Even Blinky pressed closer. They appear to have imprinted on you, Phoenix observed. Psychologically speaking, you represent safety and rescue. It will take time to. Yeah, I get it, I sighed. Okay, Cubs, let's go see the nice doctor. I'll come with you. That is highly irregular. Velisa started. Commander, with all due respect, I just crawled through your entire ventilation system with 6 traumatized children while your security drones tried to arrest me for fixing an air filter. I think we're past regular. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of her mouth twitched. Fairpoint Thompson. Dr. Penix, allow Mr. Thompson to accompany the juveniles during their evaluation. As we walked toward the medical bay, cubs still attached to me like fuzzy barnacles, I heard Gourmat behind us trying to explain to Velissa how this wasn't his fault, and Velissa very calmly explaining how this was absolutely his fault. Pip looked up at me with those big eyes. Yeah, buddy, I said. We're okay now. He squeaked, which I chose to interpret as thank you. 3 hours later, I was sitting in the medical bay watching 6 sets of parents absolutely lose their minds with joy. Turns out, when you tell people their kids have been dead for 6 months and then go, whoops, our bad, they're fine actually, you get a lot of crying. Happy crying, but still, a lot of fluids. Pip's parents were these enormous fuzzy creatures that made him look like a tiny cotton ball. They kept thanking me in a language that sounded like wind chimes having a conversation. I just nodded and smiled. Ember's mom couldn't stop glowing, which made the whole medical bay look like a rave. Chomper's dad had about twice as many teeth as Chomper, which was frankly terrifying. Blinky's parents had 9 eyes between them, and they were all crying. Klaxon's family was honking in harmony. It was beautiful and deeply weird. Stretch's guardian, because apparently his species doesn't do traditional parents, just oozed over and absorbed him for a minute in what I guess was a hug. Alien biology is wild. Commander Velissa showed up an hour after that, looking like she'd aged 10 years. She had a data pad, and that expression people get when they're about to deliver news that's both good and bad. Thompson, she said, we need to talk. If this is about the ventilation system, I actually did fix it while I was in there. You're welcome. It's not about that. She sat down across from me, which was unusual. Velissa didn't sit. She loomed. Station administration has reviewed the incident, and you violated approximately 17 different safety protocols, bypassed 3 levels of security clearance, disabled 2 security drones with coffee, and caused a station wide panic. In my defense, the panic was already happening. I just gave it a direction. Her expression didn't change. You're being written up for gross negligence of quarantine procedures. Cool, great, love that. You're also receiving a commendation for rescue operations under hazardous conditions. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? The parents have filed a formal request that you be recognized for saving their children. The Galactic Council representative on station has endorsed it. I've been overruled. She said it like the words physically hurt. Congratulations, Thompson. You're a hero. I'm a janitor who fixed an air filter. Not anymore. She slid the datapad across to me. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to human cultural liaison and emergency response specialist. I stared at the job description. It was just my old job, but with more words and 3 times the pay. You're still on maintenance duty? Vilissa continued. But now you're also responsible for interfacing with human specific station issues and providing consultation on human problem solving methodologies. You're paying me more to do the same thing. We're paying you more to keep doing what you apparently do anyway, but with authorization this time. She stood. Try not to break any more protocols, Thompson. I can't keep promoting you every time you ignore the rules. She left. I sat there holding a datapad that said I was important now, watching 6 alien cubs refuse to leave the medical bay without saying goodbye to me first. Dr. Pinnix waddled over. They wish to express gratitude. It is culturally significant for their development. So I spent the next 20 minutes getting hugged, honked at, glowed on, bitten affectionately, squeezed by something with no bones, and blinked at by 3 eyes simultaneously. You will visit? Pip's translator app asked. His parents had finally gotten it working. Yeah, buddy, I'll visit. 2 weeks later, I was back to mopping floors. Except now I had a fancy title, a nicer jumpsuit, and 6 alien kids who thought I was the best thing since sliced bread, or whatever the alien equivalent of sliced bread is. Gourmet still avoided me in the corridors. Valessa still looked disappointed every time she saw me, and the ventilation system in Sector 7B ran perfectly because I'd actually fixed it properly. Here's the thing about humans that the rest of the galaxy keeps learning the hard way. We don't see a problem and think about protocols or procedures or the proper channels to file a report. We see a problem and think, well, that's dumb, let me fix it. Is it reckless? Absolutely. Is it dangerous? Probably. Does it violate 17 safety regulations? Almost certainly. But those kids are home now, and that's what matters. I'm Jake Thompson, Human Cultural Liaison and Emergency Response Specialist, which is a fancy way of saying I'm still the guy who fixes things everyone else is too scared to touch. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Even if Chomper did permanently ruin my favorite boots, worth it.